Welcome back to Eat Sleep Boxing Repeats YouTube channel. Delighted to be joined by Elliot and Danny. We've all witnessed the destructive performance of Inoue against Nonito Donaire earlier today. We've had some time to digest it. Want to get you guys' initial thoughts on the fight, but what this video is really about is is there anyone out there who can beat Inoue who's within one or two weight divisions of him? Want to get your guys' opinion on that. Interested to see what you guys can come up with, if you agree, disagree with each other. But yeah, Danny, going to go to you first. Just general thoughts on what we witnessed earlier today, mate.
I mean, what we witnessed was absolutely brutal, wasn't it? I think we were just sort of chatting before you started recording there, Elliot. And I think, like, as you said, the consensus sort of was that, you know, Inoue probably would eventually break Donaire down this time and get the stoppage, but you know, we would hopefully see some rounds, see another really good fight like the first one. But you know, Inoue just was absolutely brutal in there. I think feel as if he's getting bigger. He looked a bit more filled out at bantamweight. I was watching clips of him in like the World Boxing Super Series, and after that the fight against Maloney, and you know, he looks more thick set now. You know, his power somehow seems to be increasing. Like Donaire, like notoriously tough, and you know, that shot in the second round that took his legs away, it was, you know, really like quite a short left hook, and his legs were completely gone from it. So yeah, scary from Inoue, really.
Absolutely. And Elliot, do you rate Inoue? Any kind of thoughts on Inoue now compared to before the fight?
I had, like Danny was saying, I had Inoue by KO later on in the fight, though, like somewhere 6-8. Yeah, I'm massively rating, to be honest. I think that's not even just saying that about today. It's just that sense of like we were kind of saying off air. It's like you get like different fighters, especially like, you know, in heavyweight division, you can have fighters that essentially throw kind of like unconventional punches that land and they stop someone. Whereas in Inoue, you're almost pairing like freakish power with someone who's technically good as well. Like literally, like that shot that you can put him down in the first round was like a short right hand. It wasn't even like, it just basically essentially didn't see it, quite on the temple, and he was gone. And that was essentially round over. I thought that was going to be fight over, and obviously kind of was, but without that break, it would have been fight over anyway. And you just see some of the like, I mean, he also like defensively was solid, didn't take many punches, slipped quite well. But yeah, it was almost like when he touches you, that's it. So yeah, I don't know really. I don't know where the limit is for him, to be perfectly honest. I'm sure we'll discuss it as we go on.
Yeah, brutal stuff. All right, cool. So we're going to discuss three weight divisions. Obviously, as we know, Inoue is a bantamweight. One thing that some people won't know is that Inoue actually started his career at light flyweight, won a world title at light flyweight, skipped up two weight divisions, dominated the super flyweight division, and has now dominated the bantamweight division. So he's a three-weight world champion. But yeah, he's kind of at quite a heavier weight than he was when he started his career. Super flyweights got the likes of Juan Francisco Estrada, Joshua Franco, and of course Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez as well. I think it's always tricky to say because we don't know what those guys would look like a weight above. But do you look at any of those guys and think that guy would give Inoue problems because the way they box, would they be able to keep him away? Would they be able to take his power? Elliot, I'll go to you first. You got anything to say about any of those guys?
I've got a lot to say about all of them, but I think what I would say is that I think I mean, it's very hard for me to sit here and say like Chocolatito wouldn't give him a fight. Yeah, at the same time, just because, you know, watching him against Martinez recently, watching him against Estrada, I know obviously lost a split decision to Estrada, but looking into the opponents and the fights that he's had and the experience that he's got, again, like I think he would, like, technically he's good enough obviously to give him a fight. Technically, obviously, he's got the KO record, what is it, like 41-51 or something ridiculous like that. The KO percentage. So obviously he's got power, but then it's just that sense, isn't it, as well, of like Inoue touches him at some point, what's going to happen? Like, I mean, he has been KO'd only once, granted, but I'm looking at him now going, what, you like 34, 35, probably leans slightly towards Inoue if they did fight, just on the basis of that. But yeah, I think he would give him a fight. I think Tron Estrada would give him a fight as well. Those guys down there, I think technically good enough to give him a fight. By give him a fight, I mean like a competitive fight that could well go. I'm not necessarily certain I'll go the distance, but when we look at it and go, that's competitive. So yeah, I think those two for me would sort of stand out from that division, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, this is an interesting one with Gonzalez in particular, because he looked great against Martinez, but I still look at him and think I look at him and think he could still make flyweight, and he's 34 years old. So I just think that I would love to see him move up and against Inoue. I personally wouldn't rule it out, because I don't think there's a huge amount of fights for Inoue out there in terms of big major fights. But yeah, I don't know how that would end. Danny, going to go to you next. What are your thoughts on those super flyweights?
Yeah, with regards to Chocolatito and Estrada and the sort of ones you touched on, I think would they give Inoue a fight? 100%. But at the same time, I would be very surprised if the fights didn't end in an Inoue stoppage. Just to touch on maybe some of the guys in that weight class that you didn't touch on, I think Jesse Bam Rodriguez fighting Rungvisai for a Superfly title. That's a cracking fight. He looked really good against Quadras to win the world title. And if he beats Rungvisai, like Rungvisai obviously like knocked out Chocolatito, gave Chocolatito his only stoppage loss. Like he's a fully fledged world class Superfly. Rodriguez, youngest world champion in box. I think he's only 22. I think if he goes out and beats Rungvisai, I think you've got a properly special talent on your hands there to be doing that at that age. But I don't think that with the weights and timing necessarily that he ever will face Inoue. Away from that, I mean, I know he's technically at flyweight. He's expressed the desire to go up and face Paul Butler's Sonny Edwards to come up with the super bantam or bantam. We talked about in the chat. I think with his style, he's got the potential to give anyone a tricky night, just because he's so hard to hit. He's so elusive. So his feet are so good. He seems to keep the feet quite well for 12 rounds. But if you've been put down by Marshall Braithwaite and he can't get hit Edwards, you'd have to fancy Inoue would get him at some point. So sort of echoing what you both sort of touched on, I think there are competitive fights amongst the lads at 112 and 115, but definitely none that I would be in any way confident picking to beat Inoue at the minute.
Yeah, there's definitely. I'm really enjoying the lower divisions at the moment. I feel like
it's unreal.
Rodriguez is a fighter that I forgot to mention there, but some really interesting fights there. It's just I don't know. It feels like it would be such a massive ask for someone to move up in weight and to beat Inoue. It would be a big ask, and desperate to see what Inoue is going to do next when he's next going to be in the ring. Moving on to bantamweights, touched on Paul Butler there. Respect where respect's due. He is the world champion now. Just going to kind of put it to the floor with this one, guys. I know because Casemiro as well, we don't know if he's ever going to compete at bantamweight again. I personally don't think he will. Jason Maloney, who we saw on the weekend, but just going to kind of put it to you guys. There's no doubt who the number one in this division is, but is there anyone, if Inoue was going to have, one more fight at bantamweight, say, who would you want it to be against and why? Danny, going to go to you first now.
If he was to have one more at bantamweight, it would be the Paul Butler fight, purely because I think he does deserve to be an undisputed champion. I don't think there's any doubt he would become an undisputed champion. No disrespect to Paul Butler, was at the fight where he beat Jonas Sultan to pick up that world title and boxed really well. He was a big underdog going into that fight. But Inoue is, to say, a different kettle of fish, I think, putting it quite lightly, to Jonas Sultan. So yeah, if he was to have one more at bantamweight, if we could get him over to the UK to face Paul Butler, I think that would be just unbelievable. You very rarely get to see sort of, the top pound for pound fighters from elsewhere in the world come over. So that's an absolute dream. Hard to imagine it ever happens, particularly in the UK. But if there's to have one more at bantam, that's what I would like to see.
Good stuff. Elliot, what would happen if Inoue fought Paul Butler?
Inoue fought Paul Butler. Paul Butler's head would be rolling around wherever they fought me. Simple as that. Joe Gallagher would be crying, and that would be literally the end of that. I think, mate, there's no two ways about it. Like, don't get me, like Paul Butler. Like, I was actually happy for Paul Butler that he achieved world champion status. Seems a good enough character in and out of the ring. But then I'm looking at it going, hey, he'd be. I mean, who is it? Is it Paul Kelly from our outlet that says that he'd be, bingo, banjoed, whatever it is on the chin? That's essentially what would happen. I don't think it would go 2 rounds. They wouldn't see the end of the second round. I genuinely don't think that. I'd quite like to see if he has to have another fight at bantamweight. I mean, to be honest, I agree with Danny in the sense that I'd like to see him become undisputed. I think he deserves that. So again, that is the fight I'd like to see. Taking belts out of it, I'd like to maybe throw him in with either Rodriguez or Casemiro. But again, like you're saying, I don't think Casemiro will make weight unless he's allowed to do it with a long sauna somewhere in the middle. So yeah, I think Butler would be the fight for me as well. I agree with Danny for those belt reasons, but there would be a head rolling, frankly.
Yeah. Well, I do think that's a genuine possibility. To be honest, if Inoue doesn't want to move up in weight, if there's no one moving up that he wants to fight, why not just complete the set and face Paul Butler later in the year? It would probably happen in Japan, I think. So yeah, I think in terms of like personally, in terms of like odds on for like the most what's most likely to happen next, I think Paul Butler's a good shout, to be honest. So yeah, we will see if that fight happens. Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting for me. As I mentioned before, Inoue started his career at light flyweight, now fighting at bantamweight. If he fought at super bantamweight, I want you guys to tell me how you think he would get on. It's another step up in weight. If I'm being honest, I think there's a higher quality of fighter at super bantamweight. Obviously, we saw Stephen Fulton in action over the weekend. He had a close fight against Brandon Figueroa a few months ago. Lewis Neary, who's just lost the one fight, Akhmadiliev, who looks like a fantastic fighter as well. There's some very good fighters at super bantamweight who are more kind of cultured towards that weight class, more used to it, whereas Inoue's never fought at that weight before. So gonna go back to you guys. Elliot, I'll start with you. How does Inoue get on at super bantamweight? Can he conquer another weight division, do you think?
Yes, is the short answer. I think there. I think. I mean, as I was saying, it's 4 pound increase in weight, and you're looking at some of the guys in there, like obviously Stephen Fulton, like you mentioned, seen in competition recently. I mean, was he 8 KOs in 21 or something? So again, not necessarily a big puncher at the weight. It's just a question, I suppose, of, I mean, undefeated to be fair though. So you're sitting there, obviously, reserves respect for that. Could he beat Fulton? It'd be a great test for him. I think, to be honest with you, as we said earlier, as I said earlier, with regards to the blend that he's got of technique and power, I think he would beat Fulton. I don't think it's a case of like Fulton trying to outbox him. I don't think you can categorically outbox him. Throw him in with someone like Akhmadiliev, that'd be a good fight, to be honest. Obviously, the power that he's got there as well. I think that'd be interesting to see. I mean, we've seen Inoue, obviously, the thing is we've seen Inoue come through 12 rounders as well. So it's like he has obviously got that in the tank as well. So I kind of feel like he could win world titles at that weight, perfectly honestly. I think he could beat Fulton. I think that'd be the next logical step in a way if he was to move up to fight someone like Fulton. I think it'd be a great way to announce it. I think it's relatively lower risk than some of the other fighters in that division, simply because you take the power equation out of it. Yeah. And I think he can outbox Fulton anyway, or possibly even stop him. I mean, it's hard to say that when Fulton's undefeated, but I think that's an outcome that I can see happening. So yeah, I do think, in answer to the question, yeah, I do think he can step up and win titles at Super Bantam 100%.
Yeah, no, exciting. Danny, do you agree with Elliot? What do you think Inoue can do at Super Bantam if he moves up?
I would say I agree to an extent. He definitely can. He definitely could, become the consensus number one at that division as well. I don't think the Fulton fight is perhaps as easy as Alex maybe suggesting. I think that's where you would see a bit of a size difference. I mean, Fulton's 5'7", but the reach, he would have significant reach on Inoue. And I only seen the highlights of the Fulton Roman fight at the weekend. I was watching the Kambosos Haney card, but I've been watched him before, and I've watched him back sort of in preparation for this. And his jab, I think, could potentially cause Inoue a lot of problems. He's so sharp with it. He throws it so frequently. I think parts of that fight could look a bit like Canelo Bivol, but I think it is a 50-50 fight. I'm really not sure who I would pick there. I think the Akhmadaliev fight, I think, is probably the other, real tough fight. I think I would probably favour Inoue against your sort of guys just below that, your Figueroas, your, the Romans. the Akhmadaliev one, I think that's the more entertaining of the two. I think that'll be a brilliant fight. Akhmadaliev just, so technically good. His feet are really good. He's aggressive. He's not like as defensive minded as Fulton, but at the same time, he is prone to defensive lapses and he can be sort of slowed down with body shots. So I think I would probably favour Inoue to catch Akhmadaliev at some point, because the physical dimensions with that one, they're quite similar. I think Akhmadaliev is only half an inch taller. They've got really similar reaches. So I think that one, that's the one I would want to see, both for the career of Inoue and for just pure entertainment value. So in short, can he? Definitely. Well, it's a big ask, but again, more than capable.
I think so. I don't know. It's exciting. I really hope he does it. Like, whether it's the right thing to do, I don't know, but I really hope he does it. Final question from me, chaps. Out of all the weights we've discussed, what's the most realistic fight? Just for kind of the get well titles, for entertainment purposes, give me one fight you want to see Inoue in. Elliot, gonna go to you, but mate, what's the one fight you want to see him in?
I'm almost. I mean, I quite like the style, the matchups where you look at people that are like essentially elusive, not carrying a lot of power versus someone who carries a lot of power, and who touches you'll go. I mean, I'd love to see in an ideal matchup someone like Sonny Edwards fight Inoue. I'd love to see it. Will it happen? Probably not. But I'd also like to see. I mean, throw him in with any of those guys that even like Danny mentioned. Like Akhmadaliev, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see him even somehow thrown in. I mean, the other guys with weight problems, but even thrown in with someone like Martinez. I think that'd just be absolute violence from literally the first round. That as well. Chocolatito, that as well. I mean, I'm naming all the names. Frankly, starting here, to be honest. I'm not going to knock it down to two. What I'll say is I'll give you two: Martinez and I want to say Chocolatito, but if he beats Chocolatito badly, they will break my heart a little bit. So I'm kind of a bit reluctant to say that either. But those are two I'd love to see, frankly. I would watch Fulton. I'd watch Akhmadaliev, of course, as well. But I think, right, fuck it. Martinez and Edwards. Those two I'd love to see. Just because I think Edwards, elusive, can be hurt. Weirdly, I might even lean towards Inoue there. But I think Martinez would be a hell of a fight. It'd be a hell of a spectacle. I'd love to watch it.
Unreal. Okay, cool. Danny, same question to you. Are you going to be a bit more disciplined than Elliot and just name it?
If Elliot didn't go first, I'd have said the exact same thing. Like, he's arguably the most entertaining fighter in boxing. Like, you say some of these fights like are mouthwatering, like him v Chocolatito, him v Estrada, Rung Vasai, all those ones. But in the interest of time, I'll go for. I think he does deserve Undisputed, and I'm a United fan, and Paul Butler was very big on Liverpool winning the quadruples. I would quite like to see him get the Inoue fight for entertainment. And aside from that, I think, as I said, the Akhmadaliev fight, it's a tougher fight than a lot of the ones who named. I think it would be, it's hard to say the most entertaining, but most entertaining and coupled with maybe the challenge as well. So I'll go Paul Butler for Undisputed and Akhmadaliev.
Good stuff.
Get ringside. You can take your wiki.
Nobody watches this. Will there be no ASBR ringside if Paul Butler watches this?
No, you never know. You never know. We shall see.
Waterproof if you're front row.
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys. Cool. Really enjoyed that. We'll be doing more of these sort of videos and talking about undefeated fighters and see if anyone can beat them. And so there's many more fighters to discuss. But yeah, thanks for your time. And yet we will see what's next for Naoya Inoue in the future. But yeah, thanks for your time, gents.
No problem. Enjoyed that.